The Galactic Council voted to exile an entire species for crimes they never committed. Earth remained silent, the only neutral voice in a chorus of condemnation. But 3 days later, we did something no one expected. We opened our doors to the 23 Sci-Fi refugees everyone else feared. This is the story of how humanity's oldest tradition, welcoming the displaced, reshaped the fate of the galaxy. Jake Morrison watched the voting display with steady eyes. The holographic tally showed 37 votes for expulsion, 0 against. The council chamber felt cold, the air still as if the life support had stopped cycling. Only Earth's light remained dark on the panel. The charges against the Zephyrians were twofold. Their research station had been monitoring a collapsing star system, taking measurements as the sun went nova. Simultaneously, their people had undergone rapid biological changes, adaptations that let them survive the harsh radiation bathing their homeworld. To the older species, these weren't survival traits. They were dangerous deviations from natural evolution. The Vorlak's representative spoke first. His voice carried the weight of millennia of tradition. We cannot permit such uncontrolled experimentation. Their very biology has become a weapon. The other elder races nodded in agreement, their representatives shifting in seats designed for forms far older than humanity's. Earth's ambassador kept his hand away from the voting panel. His silence stood out like a dead channel in a crowded frequency. That non-vote carried more weight than any yes or no. It signaled a break in the unified front, a crack in the council's certainty. Then the Zephyrian ambassador rose. His skin held a faint phosphorescent glow under the chamber lights, a biological response to stress. "We did not choose these changes," he said. "Our star chose them for us. We merely learned to live with them." He turned toward the Earth delegation. "Your world understands being judged for what you are. Your history shows how difference can become strength." He spoke of human resilience, of cultures that turned refugees into builders. "We ask not for charity. We ask for a chance to prove our worth. Give us soil and sky, and we will build something that benefits all." The chamber remained unmoved. The verdict stood. Expulsion would proceed. But as the Zephyrian delegation was escorted out, Earth's ambassador finally moved. He opened a direct line to Geneva, bypassing all council channels. No words were exchanged, just a single data packet transmitted, coordinates and a time. That silent transmission became the first act of defiance. It wasn't a vote against the council. It was something more subtle, more dangerous. It was a choice to listen when everyone else had stopped hearing. 3 standard days after the vote, Earth made its move. The Zephyrian transport drifted through neutral space, its life support running on minimal power. The 23 exiles had been denied docking rights at 7 stations. Their ship was running out of options. Earth's signal cut through the static on a secure channel. It contained coordinates, approach vectors, and a single word: welcome. The transmission was clean, deliberate, and completely unauthorized. Accepting them was a direct violation of council decree. There would be consequences. This wasn't a symbolic gesture. It was a physical act. Humanity had always taken in those with nowhere else to go. That tradition stretched back centuries, from war refugees to climate displaced, from political exiles to those fleeing famine. Now it extended beyond the atmosphere. Geneva became the designated landing site. Engineers worked around the clock converting a former research campus into a habitation facility. They didn't retrofit existing structures. They built from the ground up for Zephyrian biology. The atmospheric mix was adjusted to match their homeworld's thinning air. Gravity plates were recalibrated to simulate Zephyr's lighter pull. Even the lighting was tuned to their visual spectrum, casting the halls in soft blues and violets unseen by human eyes. Medical teams prepared isolation wards with specialized radiation shielding. Nutritional scientists synthesized protein compounds based on transmitted biological data. Every corridor, every room, every piece of equipment was designed around their unique physiology. The landing was quiet. No media coverage, no official announcement. The Zephyrian shuttle touched down at 03:47 local time. Ramp extended. The first exile stepped onto Earth soil. Her skin caught the moonlight, shimmering faintly like brushed metal. She didn't look like a threat. She looked tired. Human escorts waited at a respectful distance. They wore no protective gear, carried no weapons. Their presence was calm, professional. One gestured toward the warmly lit entrance of the new facility. The gesture was simple, universal. Inside, the air carried the scent of ozone and clean linens. The floors were smooth, heated slightly to comfort Zephyrian feet accustomed to warm stone. Screens displayed information in both standard galactic and the flowing script of their native language. In the control room, technicians monitored biological readouts. Heart rates, neural activity, metabolic functions. Everything registered within expected parameters. No anomalies, no surprises. Just 23 beings breathing easier than they had in weeks. This was more than hospitality. It was a statement written in action, not words. Earth had chosen a side without firing a shot or issuing a threat. It had simply opened a door. The Galactic Council would receive the formal notice within hours. They would read the carefully worded document citing humanitarian exception clauses and historical precedent. They would understand the message behind the legal language. Earth was no longer just another member world. It had become something else entirely, a place that judged actions, not biology. A refuge. Dr. Helen Carter stood behind the observation glass as the first Zephyrian entered the medbay. Their skin held a metallic sheen under the sterile lights, not like polished metal but like deep water catching moonlight. Their eyes were completely black, no visible iris or white. The medical scanners immediately registered abnormal readings. The Galactic Council's report called these features artificial modifications. Dangerous meddling with biology. Dr. Carter saw something different. Her instruments showed cellular structures that couldn't have been engineered in any lab. They were too integrated, too seamless. Every system worked in harmony with these so-called alterations. She reviewed the environmental data from their homeworld. Their sun had been dying for centuries, pumping out lethal levels of radiation and electromagnetic chaos. Normal Zephyrian biology would have crumbled under that assault. These changes weren't chosen. They were necessary. Their bones were denser, laced with minerals that blocked specific radiation wavelengths. Their neural pathways showed extra insulation, protecting thought processes from energy interference. Even their blood carried compounds that neutralized radioactive particles. This wasn't weaponization. This was survival. Dr. Carter called it accelerated environmental adaptation, the next logical step in their evolution. Their bodies had responded to existential threat with incredible precision. What the galaxy feared as dangerous mutations were actually sophisticated biological solutions. Their minds worked differently too. Brain scans showed activity patterns unlike any recorded species. They processed information in parallel streams rather than linear sequences. One subject solved complex mathematical problems while simultaneously composing musical arrangements. Their cognition wasn't just faster. It was fundamentally restructured. The most striking ability emerged during physical testing. They could sense and manipulate electromagnetic fields, not through technology, through biological means we still don't fully understand. One subject demonstrated by aligning scattered iron filings into perfect patterns without touching them. Another gently altered the frequency of nearby communication devices just by concentration. Their healing capabilities defied medical understanding. A minor laceration sealed itself in minutes. Cell regeneration occurred at rates that should have been impossible. Their bodies didn't just repair damage. They rebuilt tissue with improved structural integrity. What was severed came back stronger. Dr. Carter compiled her findings with careful precision. She documented each adaptation's clear environmental purpose: the radiation shielding, the neural protection, the enhanced sensory perception, all direct responses to their world's harsh conditions. The report made one thing unmistakably clear: the Galactic Council had exiled them for surviving too well. For evolving solutions to problems others couldn't comprehend. They saw danger where there was only brilliant adaptation. What they called aberration was actually evolutionary masterpiece. Dr. Carter sent her initial assessment to Earth's Scientific Council. She attached raw data files showing biological readings. She included video of the EM field manipulation. She ended with a simple conclusion. These weren't dangerous deviants. They were living examples of nature's incredible ability to adapt. The implications were staggering. Their biological traits could revolutionize medicine, energy systems, space travel. Their neural patterns suggested new approaches to computing and problem-solving. Their very existence challenged what was considered possible in natural evolution. What the galaxy had thrown away as broken, Earth was beginning to recognize as precious. The Zephyrians weren't damaged goods. They were natural wonders. Director Carlos Martinez watched from the observation deck. The meeting room below held 12 human scientists and 3 Zephyrian adults. The air hummed with filtered circulation. No one spoke. The humans kept their hands visible on the table. The Zephyrians sat perfectly still, their dark eyes scanning the room. A technician rolled in a cart of demonstration materials. It held basic lab equipment, magnets, metal shavings, simple energy field detectors. The technician's hands shook slightly as he arranged the items. He avoided direct eye contact with the visitors. One of the Zephyrians gestured toward the metal shavings. Her fingers didn't touch them. The shavings shifted on the tray. They arranged themselves into a perfect spiral pattern. The human scientists leaned forward. Their expression shifted from caution to focused attention. Then a young Zephyrian child entered the room. She moved with her parent, holding onto a scaled hand. Her skin held the same metallic sheen, but softer, like brushed aluminum. She looked at the scattered metal pieces on the demonstration table. Without being asked, she extended her hand. The shavings lifted into the air. They didn't just float. They arranged into complex geometric shapes. First a cube, then a dodecahedron, then a flowing lattice that shifted like living architecture. The patterns held perfect symmetry. The shavings never clumped or fell. Human engineers watched their sensor readings. The energy fields around the child showed minute fluctuations. They corresponded exactly with the metal's movements. There was no heat signature, no EM burst, no detectable energy output. The control was too precise for their instruments to measure properly. One engineer adjusted his scanner. He targeted the quantum field sensors toward the demonstration. The readings defied conventional models. The child wasn't just moving metal. She was interacting with fundamental forces at a level human technology couldn't achieve. Her control was instinctual, effortless, the lead engineer whispered to his team. They saw immediate applications. Field containment systems could be stabilized without power expenditure. Material fabrication could achieve perfect molecular alignment. Energy transfer efficiency could increase beyond theoretical limits. The child formed the shavings into a perfect sphere. It rotated slowly in the air, each piece maintaining exact distance from its neighbors. Then she let them settle gently back onto the tray. The entire demonstration took less than 30 seconds. The room remained silent for another moment. Then the lead human engineer stood. He approached the Zephyrian child and gave a slight bow. It was a gesture of respect, not from human to alien, but from scientist to scientist. The tension in the room evaporated. Carlos Martinez watched the change happen in real time. The fear and curiosity transformed into professional recognition. The humans began asking technical questions. The Zephyrians answered in soft voices, their explanations translated through discreet earpieces. What began as a cautious first contact became a working session. Engineers sketched designs on tablets, showing them to Zephyrian colleagues. The visitors didn't need sketches. They visualized solutions in 3 dimensions, projecting mental images that human minds could almost perceive. By the end of the hour, they had outlined 3 joint projects. One involved stabilizing fusion containment fields. Another focused on improving sensor resolution. The third explored new energy transmission methods. Each project leveraged Zephyrian abilities alongside human technology. The team scheduled follow-up meetings. They exchanged data protocols. The humans stopped seeing biological oddities and started seeing partners. The Zephyrians relaxed their formal posture. Their skin patterns shifted subtly, displaying what translators identified as professional interest. Carlos made a note in his log. The entry was brief. It read, "First contact successful. Collaboration initiated." He closed the tablet and watched them work. The divide between species was still there, but now they were building bridges across it. Steve Patterson studied the fusion containment schematics on his screen. The design showed energy fluctuations at the edges. Current human models wasted 30% of their output just maintaining stability. The magnetic constrictors required constant recalibration. Even minor solar flares could disrupt the entire system. Velshara entered the engineering bay without sound. Her footsteps made no noise on the polished floor. She stood beside Patterson's workstation, her dark eyes scanning the schematics. She didn't ask for access to the controls. She didn't request a terminal. She closed her eyes for a moment. The air around her shimmered like heat haze over desert pavement. A three-dimensional model of the fusion core appeared in the space between them. It wasn't projected from any device. It emerged from her mind, solid and detailed. The hologram showed every component in perfect scale. Magnetic coils glowed with blue energy lines. Plasma streams flowed in controlled currents. The design was identical to Patterson's schematics, but alive, moving, real. Belshara's fingers moved slightly. The hologram responded. She adjusted the magnetic constrictor alignment. The fields tightened, becoming more efficient. She reconfigured the plasma injection ports. The energy flow smoothed out, losing its erratic pulses. Patterson watched the changes happen in real time. Each modification improved stability. Each adjustment reduced energy waste. The hologram responded to her thoughts faster than any computer interface could process commands. She demonstrated a complete redesign of the containment field geometry. The new configuration used intersecting field layers instead of single constraint bands. The plasma channels became more precise, more controlled. Energy signatures showed dramatic improvement. Patterson's monitoring equipment registered the results. Containment efficiency increased by 30%. Stability margins expanded beyond previous limits. The system could now handle external disruptions without emergency shutdowns. The human engineering team had gathered silently. They watched the hologram shift and flow. They saw solutions to problems that had plagued fusion technology for decades. The adjustments weren't just incremental improvements. They were fundamental breakthroughs. Belshara opened her eyes. The hologram remained stable in the air. She gestured toward it, inviting examination. Patterson reached out instinctively, his hand passing through the energy fields. The image held its form, reacting to his movement without distortion. One engineer ran the numbers on her tablet. She calculated the impact on ship propulsion systems. The efficiency gains would allow longer jumps between stars. Another studied the power distribution patterns. He saw applications for planetary energy grids. Patterson compared the holographic model to his original schematics. The differences were stark. Belshara's design used existing components in new configurations. It required no new technology, just new understanding. The team remained silent for a full minute after she finished. They were processing what they'd witnessed. This wasn't just better engineering. It was a different way of thinking about problems. A different way of interacting with technology. Belshara let the hologram fade slowly. The last traces of light dissolved into the air. She gave a slight nod to Patterson, then turned to leave. Her work was done. The demonstration needed no explanation. Patterson saved the sensor readings from the demonstration. He captured every detail of the holographic model. His team began immediately adapting the design for testing. They worked with quiet intensity, their earlier skepticism replaced by focused determination. The fusion core redesign became the first major joint project. It proved that Zephyrian abilities could integrate with human technology. It showed that their way of thinking could solve problems humans considered fundamental limitations. That single demonstration changed everything. It wasn't just about better engines. It was about discovering new ways to see the universe. Maria Santos watched from the observation deck above the children's wing. Below, two separate play areas stood divided by a transparent barrier. Human children played with building blocks and interactive screens on one side. Zephyrian children sat quietly on the other, their hands moving in precise patterns as they manipulated light and shadow. The separation was strict, enforced by anxious parents on both sides. Human parents worried about biological differences. They whispered about radiation levels, strange energies, unpredictable abilities. They kept their children close during facility tours, avoiding eye contact with the newcomers. Zephyrian parents held their own concerns. They feared human curiosity, medical testing, hidden agendas. They kept their children within sight at all times, monitoring interactions through the clear divide. The children themselves showed no such hesitation. A human boy of about 7 pressed his hand against the transparent barrier. A Zephyrian girl of similar age mirrored the gesture from the other side. Their palms almost touched through the clear material. They smiled at each other, a universal expression that needed no translation. The integration team made a careful decision. They introduced supervised play sessions without the barrier. The first meeting was quiet, cautious. Children stood in small groups, watching each other with curious eyes. Then a Zephyrian child created a simple light pattern in the air, a swirling helix of soft blue energy. A human girl laughed and tried to mimic it with her hands. They found common ground in games. Human children taught tag and hide and seek. Zephyrian children demonstrated games of light and pattern recognition. They communicated through gestures, facial expressions, and growing fragments of shared language. English phrases mixed with Zephyrian light signals. They developed a hybrid communication system within days. Zephyrian children used subtle skin luminescence to express emotions. Happiness showed as soft gold patterns across their cheeks. Concentration created deep blue concentric circles on their foreheads. Human children learned to read these signals quickly. They began mimicking the patterns with colored light wands from the toy chest. Human playstyles shifted. Children started incorporating light patterns into their games. Tag became a game of chasing specific color signals. Hide and seek included finding hidden light markers. The Zephyrian children adapted too. They learned to enjoy the physical exertion of running games, their bodies adapting to Earth's gravity with remarkable speed. Parents watched from the observation areas above. They saw their children laughing together, playing games that blended both cultures. A human boy helped a Zephyrian girl build a block tower. She stabilized it with precise energy fields when it started to wobble. They high-fived, her hand glowing faintly at the contact. The cultural wing staff noticed changes in both groups. Human children became more visually attentive, noticing subtle details they previously overlooked. Zephyrian children became more physically expressive, using body language alongside their light patterns. They began developing new games that neither culture had invented alone. Education specialists adjusted their programs. They created mixed classes where children learned through combined methods. Human teachers used light projectors to demonstrate concepts. Zephyrian instructors incorporated physical movement into lessons. The children adapted faster than the adults, creating their own hybrid learning styles. Maria Santos documented the progress in her daily reports. She noted decreased anxiety levels in both groups. Children who had been fearful now sought out cross-species playmates. Parents began relaxing their restrictions after seeing positive interactions. The observation decks grew less crowded as trust built. The children's wing became the most peaceful area in the facility. Laughter and soft light patterns filled the space. The next generation was building something the adults had struggled to create: genuine understanding. They weren't just tolerating differences. They were incorporating them into something new. The cultural division teams took note. They began applying lessons from the children's interactions to adult integration programs. Simple games, shared activities, visual communication. The children had found pathways the diplomats missed. Their natural curiosity had overcome generations of cultural programming. What began as cautious observation became active participation. Staff members joined the games, learning from the children's examples. The play area expanded as more parents allowed participation. The transparent barrier remained stored away, a relic of earlier fears. The children had made it obsolete through simple, honest interaction. Dr. Patricia Lee reviewed the initial psychological assessments. The Zephyrian adults showed classic trauma responses: hypervigilance, social withdrawal, disrupted sleep patterns. Their biological monitoring revealed corresponding physiological changes. Elevated stress hormones, altered neural activity, suppressed immune function. The trauma wasn't just emotional. It was written into their cells. The exile had damaged them deeply. They carried the weight of collective rejection. Their unique biology, which should have been celebrated as evolutionary triumph, had become the reason for their punishment. This created a terrible paradox. Their greatest strengths were tied directly to their deepest pain. Earth's response was multidimensional. Psychological counseling sessions began immediately. Therapists trained in cross-cultural communication worked with Zephyrian healers. They developed hybrid treatment approaches that respected both human and Zephyrian healing traditions. The sessions focused on rebuilding self-worth through contribution. Social integration programs provided structured opportunities. Zephyrian scientists joined research teams. Engineers collaborated on joint projects. Medical specialists shared knowledge with human doctors. Each successful interaction became therapeutic. Each contribution rebuilt damaged confidence. Their biological gifts became part of the healing process. Zephyrian healers demonstrated techniques for accelerated tissue regeneration. Human medical teams adapted these methods for human patients. Burn victims healed with reduced scarring. Surgical recovery times improved dramatically. The very abilities that caused their exile were now saving lives. Human cultural integration specialists worked closely with Zephyrian community leaders. They developed shared social spaces where both species could interact naturally. Mealtimes became cultural exchanges. Recreational activities blended traditions from both worlds. The Zephyrians began teaching their language and customs to interested humans. A phrase started circulating among the human staff. They said it quietly with respect. Their pain might help heal others. It wasn't just poetic sentiment. It was observable fact. Zephyrian trauma responses had heightened their empathy. They could sense emotional distress in humans with uncanny accuracy. This ability made them exceptional caregivers. The medical wing documented remarkable cases. A Zephyrian healer sat with a terminally ill human patient. Without words, she seemed to understand the patient's fears. Her presence alone reduced the patient's pain levels. Monitoring equipment showed physiological changes that defied conventional medical explanation. Another Zephyrian worked with trauma survivors from conflict zones. He helped them process experiences through shared silent meditation. Patients reported breakthroughs after sessions that traditional therapy hadn't achieved in months. The healing worked both ways. As they helped humans, the Zephyrians themselves healed. The psychological assessments showed steady improvement. Nightmares decreased. Social engagement increased. Biological markers normalized. The Zephyrians began initiating conversations with human colleagues. They started sharing meals outside scheduled times. Their skin patterns showed more frequent displays of contentment. Dr. Lee's final assessment was clear. Inclusion had proven more effective than any medication or therapy. Giving them purpose had been the key. Allowing them to contribute their unique abilities had rebuilt what condemnation had broken. The very traits that made them different had become their path to recovery. The therapeutic value of acceptance became undeniable. The Zephyrians weren't just receiving help. They were giving back in ways nobody had anticipated. Their journey from outcasts to healers demonstrated a fundamental truth. Sometimes the deepest wounds require the most unexpected medicine. Carlos Martinez finished the 6-month assessment report. The document ran 73 pages. Every projection from the initial integration plan had been exceeded. The concerns that dominated early discussions now seemed like artifacts from another era. The initial fears had focused on cultural incompatibility. Experts predicted communication barriers, social friction, biological tensions. They prepared for misunderstandings, conflicts, adjustment periods. The reality proved different. The differences that worried planners became the project's greatest assets. The Geneva facility expanded its physical footprint. Construction crews worked around active research areas. New wings rose beside the original structure. The population grew beyond the initial 23. Zephyrian families arrived from hidden shelters across the galaxy. They came quietly, following rumors of sanctuary. Human staff numbers increased correspondingly. Scientists, engineers, medical personnel, all volunteered for extended assignments. The facility became a city within a city. Its growth followed organic patterns, expanding to meet actual needs rather than predetermined plans. Collaboration moved beyond experimental phases. Joint teams worked on 72 active projects. Research areas included energy systems, material science, medical technology, and astrophysics. The teams didn't operate as human groups with Zephyrian consultants. They functioned as integrated units. The social dimension developed its own momentum. Shared dining areas saw mixed groups at every meal. Recreation facilities adapted games that both species could enjoy. Cultural exchanges became daily occurrences. Human musicians learned Zephyrian harmonic patterns. Zephyrian artists incorporated human visual techniques. Economic benefits emerged unexpectedly. Several projects reached commercialization phase. Energy containment systems showed dramatic efficiency improvements. Medical devices based on Zephyrian biology entered production. The facility became self-funding through technology licensing and patents. Production speeds accelerated beyond predictions. Manufacturing processes improved through Zephyrian field manipulation. Material fabrication achieved precision levels previously impossible. Innovation cycles shortened from years to months. Breakthroughs came weekly instead of annually. The psychological barriers dissolved completely. Teams shared working languages that blended technical terms from both cultures. Problem-solving sessions used hybrid methods that leveraged different cognitive strengths. The initial caution gave way to professional respect and personal camaraderie. Carlos included detailed metrics in his report. Productivity measurements showed consistent upward trends. Innovation indices broke previous records. Cultural integration scores reached unprecedented levels. The data formed a clear pattern of success. The facility's security status changed from experimental to permanent. Funding shifted from government appropriation to self-generated revenue. Staff contracts changed from temporary to career positions. What began as a humanitarian gesture became a stable institution. The report's conclusion was straightforward. Initial fears had proven completely unfounded. Cultural differences created complementary strengths. Biological variations enabled new capabilities. Psychological diversity enhanced problem-solving. The experiment demonstrated that difference itself could be engineered into advantage. Carlos attached appendices with project summaries. Each showed how human and Zephyrian approaches combined to create superior outcomes. The fusion containment redesign, the medical diagnostic systems, the quantum computing interfaces, all benefited from integrated perspectives. He included personnel evaluations from team leaders. They described unprecedented collaboration levels. They noted how cognitive differences created robust solutions. They reported higher satisfaction scores than any previous project. The final page contained a single recommendation. The integration model should expand to other facilities. The Geneva experiment proved that cross-species collaboration could drive progress beyond conventional limits. What began with 23 refugees could change how civilizations interact. Carlos saved the document and prepared distribution copies. The report would go to Earth's governing council and scientific advisory boards. It would also be shared with the Zephyrian community leaders. Their joint success belonged to both species equally. The facility continued its work outside his office window. Teams moved through corridors discussing projects. Mixed groups gathered in common areas. The sounds of collaboration filled the air. The initial experiment had become a working reality. The research teams made a breakthrough discovery. They were studying Zephyrian field manipulation abilities. The initial focus was on practical applications: energy control, material science, propulsion systems. Then the scientists noticed something deeper happening. The Zephyrians weren't just manipulating energy fields. They were perceiving realities humans couldn't detect. Human instruments registered standard quantum field readings. The Zephyrians described additional layers of interaction. They spoke of energy patterns that existed between known particles. They detected fluctuations in what humans considered empty space. Their perception operated at levels beyond instrument calibration. This extrasensory capability enabled remarkable coordination. Zephyrian teams could work in perfect synchrony without communication. They adjusted energy fields in harmony with each other's actions. Their movements became perfectly coordinated like a single organism operating multiple limbs. Human observers noted near telepathic levels of teamwork. The Geneva facility transformed into a living laboratory. Every corridor, every room became a testing ground. Teams worked on advanced field manipulation projects. They conducted experiments in real-world conditions rather than isolated labs. The entire structure became an instrument for discovery. Starship engine testing began in the main hangar. Zephyrian engineers demonstrated field control techniques that stabilize fusion cores. They created energy containment fields that adapted to external conditions. The engines ran smoother, quieter, more efficiently. Human engineers watched performance metrics improve beyond theoretical limits. Energy system redesign followed. Teams created power distribution networks that self-adjusted to demand. They developed safety protocols that prevented cascade failures. The systems became more resilient, more responsive. The facility's power grid became the most advanced in human space. Mathematics became the universal language. Human and Zephyrian scientists developed new notation systems. They created equations that described the previously undetectable fields. The mathematical language bridged their different perceptual realities. Complex concepts became shareable through precise notation. The teams noticed something unexpected happening. After months of close collaboration, human scientists began developing faint field perception. It started as intuitive guesses that proved correct, then became consistent awareness of energy patterns. The Zephyrian abilities were somehow transferable through prolonged exposure. Zephyrians reported similar changes. They began understanding human visual and auditory processing better. Their perception expanded to include human sensory ranges. The cross-species interaction was creating hybrid capabilities in both directions. A harmonic network began forming spontaneously. Team members could anticipate each other's actions with uncanny accuracy. Problem-solving sessions became fluid exchanges of half-formed ideas completed by others. The facility developed a rhythm of shared thought and action. The network operated through subtle field interactions. Team members sensed each other's intentions through energy patterns. They coordinated complex tasks without verbal communication. The harmony extended beyond work into social interactions and daily routines. Human scientists documented the phenomenon carefully. They measured synchronization levels between team members. They recorded response times during collaborative tasks. The data showed coordination beyond chance or training. Something fundamental was changing in how they worked together. The harmonic network represented a new form of consciousness. It wasn't telepathy in the traditional sense. It was shared perception through field awareness. It allowed integrated problem-solving without loss of individual perspective. The whole became greater than the sum of its parts. This development had profound implications. It suggested that consciousness might be more connected than previously believed. It indicated that perception could extend beyond biological limits. It showed that collaboration could create new forms of awareness. The teams continued their work with renewed purpose. They were no longer just studying energy fields. They were exploring the nature of perception itself. They were mapping uncharted territory of mind and matter. The harmonic network kept expanding, including more participants with each passing week. Bobby Turner submitted his application to the Earth Defense Force Recruitment Office. The young Zephyrian stood at attention before the review board. His skin showed faint silver patterns that indicated nervous anticipation. The military psychologist had cleared him. The technical evaluators praised his abilities. The command staff remained hesitant. Captain Roy Henderson reviewed the file in his quarters. An alien serving on a human warship. No precedent existed. The regulations had no provisions for non-human personnel. Yet the Geneva facilities reports showed remarkable capabilities. Henderson made his decision. He would accept the volunteer, but with restrictions. Bobby received technical specialist designation. He was assigned to the engine room of the destroyer EDF Valiant. His duties involved monitoring fusion core stability. Human crew members watched him carefully. Some kept distance. Others tested him with complex technical questions. He answered them all correctly. His enhanced perception became apparent immediately. He detected energy fluctuations seconds before the sensors registered them. He identified potential component failures hours before diagnostic routines flagged them. The engineering staff began relying on his warnings. They learned to trust his instincts. During routine patrol near Mars, the Valiant's main reactor developed instability. The containment field fluctuated erratically. Warning lights flashed across engineering consoles. The automated systems struggled to compensate. Temperature readings climbed toward critical levels. Bobby stood near the main reactor housing. His eyes were closed. His hands rested lightly on the cool metal surface. He sensed the energy patterns within the core. The fields were misaligning. The magnetic constrictors were losing synchronization. He identified the fault point milliseconds before the computers, a failing regulator in Sector 7. The component hadn't yet shown errors on diagnostics, but Bobby felt its energy signature decaying. He reported the location to the chief engineer. The engineering team scrambled. They bypassed the failing regulator. They manually stabilized the containment field. The temperature readings dropped back to safe levels. The crisis passed without damage. The entire incident lasted 12 seconds. Captain Henderson reviewed the engine room logs. He saw the timing of Bobby's warning. The Zephyrian had acted before the alarm sounded. His intervention prevented a core breach that could have destroyed the ship. The next morning, Henderson assembled the crew in the main hangar. He stood beside Bobby at the podium. He described the containment incident. He detailed how Bobby's unique abilities had detected the fault. He credited the young Zephyrian with saving the ship and everyone aboard. The crew responded with applause. The hesitation and suspicion evaporated. Bobby became just another crew member. His differences became assets rather than curiosities. The Valiant continued its patrol with enhanced capabilities. Henderson updated his report to Earth Defense Command. He recommended full integration of Zephyrian personnel. He cited the tactical advantages of their perceptual abilities. He described how Bobby's skills complemented existing technology. The Valiant's engineering section adopted new procedures. They incorporated Bobby's field awareness into their monitoring systems. They developed protocols that combined technological and biological sensing. The ship became safer, more responsive. Bobby continued his duties with quiet competence. His skin patterns now showed the steady silver of contentment. He had found his place not as an alien among humans, but as a specialist doing essential work. The military hesitation had been replaced by professional respect. The Earth Defense Force began reviewing other Zephyrian applications. The success on the Valiant demonstrated practical benefits. What began as a humanitarian gesture became strategic advantage. Integration moved from social experiment to operational reality.